Hi, hey, hello, and welcome to another fine episode of a Colts podcast brought to you by Sports Illustrated and the Horseshoe Huddle. My name's Brandon. I'm your host, joined here by your co-host, my best friend, Andrew Moore. The deed is done. The Colts have a quarterback. And guess what? It's what we're going to talk about today. The Colts quarterback, what we think about it, and let's be honest, how excited we are that that's the news. Andrew, how are you doing today? Are we happy about this move? What's your first thought? How's your Wednesday been? I'm very excited. Want to talk about all the things at once.
Man, it's been crazy. It's been a very, very busy, I'd say busy 2 weeks since free agency started, with not only us with the podcast, with everything going on at Horseshoe Huddle. Now the Colts got a UQB1, and I'm very excited. I honestly think this is the best possible outcome that the Colts could have had this offseason, because we knew Aaron Rodgers probably wasn't coming to Indy. We knew Russell Wilson wasn't coming to Indy. And we didn't even think that Matt Ryan was really an option to start free agency. And here we get a former MVP, a guy that is still playing at a very high level, coming to a team and a roster that has probably more talent than he's had in quite some time. So I'm ecstatic about the move. I think it was absolutely the best possible outcome for the Colts, and I'm fired up to see what he can do down in the Horseshoe next year.
Yeah, absolutely excited. We're probably going to run over Andrew, so let's just dig right in. The Colts have sent a 2022 third round pick to the Atlanta Falcons for Ryan. Let's start here. The Colts did not trade for Matt Ryan. The Colts absolutely stole Matt Ryan. I don't know how we did it. Not only did we only give up a third, we didn't even give up our third. We gave up the third that we got from Carson, our lesser of 2/3.
So you got it a little mixed up. We did give up the lesser of the third round picks this year, but it's
not the one we got from Carson.
But it's the Colts third round pick, the one that the Colts got from the Commanders. That's actually 9 or 10 spots better than the Colts.
Either way, we gave up the shittier of the three picks.
You are correct. And I kind of want to go into how this trade came about, because I think it explains a little bit of why the Colts were able to pull this off for not having to give up as much draft capital. So after the whole Deshaun Watson debacle with the Atlanta Falcons, Watson ends up spurning the Falcons and choosing the Cleveland Browns. The Falcons and Matt Ryan had a decision to make. Do they try to mend their relationship and move forward, or is it time for Matt Ryan to move on? So Ryan and his representatives were in talks with the Falcons, and Ryan made it clear that if there was only one place that Matt Ryan wanted to go if he did leave the Falcons, and it was the Colts. So the Falcons allowed Ryan to meet with the Colts, and then last Saturday night, when we thought that when nothing was going on, the Colts still stayed in communication with the Falcons all through the weekend, even though Deshaun Watson had moved on and chosen the Browns. So Saturday night, Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, Marcus Brady, and Parks Frazier, the assistant quarterback coach, all met with Matt Ryan over a Zoom call on Saturday night and talked with him about the possibility of him joining the Colts, how it was going to be, the roster he was going to come into, the locker room, the organization that he was going to come into. And Ryan said this in his press conference yesterday, that something that really resonated with him was Frank Reich talking and understanding of his situation of spending his entire career in one spot. And that's great, but the thing is, it could be even greater. There could be greener pastures to be able to establish that in a new organization, be able to chase that. It's rejuvenating, and that really hit with Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan said when he got off the call, his wife even noticed a change with him, and it was at that moment that he knew, and so he told the Falcons that he wanted to move on. He wanted to go to the Colts, and then Monday, that's when the deal got done. And I think that's why the Colts were able to get Matt Ryan for only a third-round pick, because the Falcons and their GM Terry Fondant said this today, that they wanted to do right by Matt Ryan.
Sure.
For Matt Ryan being there for 14 seasons, they could have started a bidding war and probably got more for him and traded Matt Ryan to the highest bidder, but they wanted to do right by him. They wanted to send him to the place that he was going to go, that he wanted to go, I should say. And that's how they landed on the Colts, and the Colts were only forced to really give up a third round pick in return for Matt Ryan.
What was I going to say? I was wondering that same thing, but didn't he have I assume he had a no trade clause. I mean, every quarterback's got a no trade clause.
He did not have a no trade clause. So really, I mean, we've just been hearing that a lot because of Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, but most
Aaron
quarterbacks,
Rodgers.
most Aaron Rodgers, most players in the NFL do not have no trade clause. Only a certain few. And I heard some Falcons fans saying he did, but everything I saw and reading up on his contract, especially for my big piece on how his contract would fit with the Colts, I never saw anything about a no trade clause.
Hola, Rusty. Thanks for joining us, and we will discuss that for sure. Thank you. First off, I want to address this clown in our comments real quick. We like to call him Stats Matt. And I gave him a little shit on Twitter this week because he was really kind of shitting on the idea of Matt Ryan when it popped up. I was excited. He goes, he's like calling him a noodle arm like Phil Rivers, just absolutely disrespecting Matty Ice. I told him, I said, hey man, this dude's still good. He put up championship numbers this year, fantasy football championship numbers to beat the Andrew Moore in fantasy football this year. Death taxes and Jonathan Taylor breaking one off, death taxes and Matt Ryan getting drafted in the 6th to 7th round by this guy. I mean, it's never going to stop. The guy's good. I mean, Julio Jones running down the field, somebody's going to get the ball to him. I mean, let's get real. Let's talk about the deal. He came on. That was a big concern. You know what? First, let me go back. I'm sorry. I'm all over the place. I'm very excited about this. I was open to, and we talked about last week, Ryan or Baker. Once the deal went down with the Browns, I thought this Matt Ryan thing was just going to be gone. I was very sad. This is the preference I had out of the two. And maybe we'll talk more about this at the end about what this means for the team. Because that's not really on our list here specifically, what that means for the team right now, but we'll talk about that later. But I do feel like this is a more towards what Irsay's been saying, more towards we're ready to win. So let's get there. So Colts restructure Matt Ryan's deal, big concern with people who didn't look very far into it. Andrew was one of those people who then did his job as a journalist, big J journalism, and took a deep dive into that deal. Ryan's 2-year, $53 million deal, restructured to be mostly fully guaranteed. How do you feel about that one?
I think it's a big statement by the Colts, and it's a statement saying that they expect Matt Ryan to be their starter for at least the next 2 seasons, because after this season, there wasn't going to be any more guarantees on Matt Ryan's deal. But now that you make his contract pretty much fully guaranteed, that means that the Colts did move off of him after next year, they'd be on the hook for $28 to $30 million. And they're not going to do that. So this is a big statement, and it's confidence that Matt Ryan is going to be here for the foreseeable future. I think it's a good move, especially because we've seen maybe some decline in Matt Ryan, but it hasn't been that decline where he's just fallen off a cliff. And I think a lot of it has to do with he's running for his life behind a terrible offensive line there in Atlanta. He has no running game. His top wide receiver last year was Russell Gage. And I mean, Russell Gage is a fine player, but he's not a number 1 wide receiver. Calvin Ridley was out. You have Kyle Pitts, who is starting to come on, but again, he's a rookie. He's a tight end. that there's still plenty of juice within Matt Ryan. You watch the film, and I've watched a couple of his games from last year. I mean, does he have a Carson Wentz arm where he can throw it 60 yards on a rope? No, I don't think so. But he does still have plenty of arm strength to get the ball 50 yards down the field. He gets the ball out super quick. Great anticipation. And I think that is why the Colts are making this deal, because they have faith that Matt Ryan could continue to play at a high level for a couple years. And then finally it also opens up more cap space. If they didn't restructure it, and the thing is, the final restructure numbers haven't came out, so we're not sure how much cap space this has given the Colts just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But without the restructure, he would have been at $16 million, or the Colts would have $16 million in cap space left. After this restructure, it's almost certain that it's going to go up quite a bit. They're still going to have the ability to make some moves, get some wide receivers, maybe add to the defense, but it just opens up some cap space so that way the Colts can continue to make moves this offseason.
And Tyler and Stats Matt here in the chat, Cordell Patterson did have a good season. That was your fantasy steal of the year if you landed him early. I don't know the stats, and Matt, that's where we rely on you. I'd love to know how many of Cordell Patterson's yards came out of, dunk down passes.
Well, here's the thing too. I mean, I've heard his stats this week. Cordell Patterson had a good year, especially for a wide receiver converted to a running back. He averaged 4 yards a carry, and he had 600 yards. Jonathan Taylor had 5.5 yards a carry and 1,800 yards. That's a big difference. If you're going to take, you look at Jonathan Taylor and Cordell Patterson, you're going to take JT 12 times out of 10. I can guarantee you that.
Well, and I don't think that's his point. I just think he's wondering how much of the offensive success last year in Atlanta had to do with Cordell. But you know what? We're still going to have a lot of success because of Jonathan Taylor. So I'm not real worried about that. I think this restructure to make that mostly fully guaranteed not only helps us now, but it helps us later. If Ryan has a good 2 years, like you said, it shows commitment to him through 2 years, but also I think that showing him that commitment through 2 years might help us out at the end of these 2 years if we want to keep him. And then helps us out too that maybe we could have restructured and extended, and we didn't put ourselves into a pit like that. So it's good for both sides. Definitely good for us. And let's just talk about it now. I think it shows the Colts' commitment because Chris Ballard's still not going buck wild in free agency does not mean the Colts aren't showing that they're trying to commit to winning now, while Chris Ballard is still also trying to preserve his future. Do you agree?
I agree, and I think a big reason for that, and Ballard even admitted this a little bit yesterday on Pat McAfee's show, that I mean they were in on some free agents that were bigger names, but the thing is, when you don't have the quarterback in place, that scares a lot of guys off. A lot of guys are going to pick the place that has the established quarterback rather than if they think they're coming to the team and they're thinking Sam Ellinger might be the one throwing them the ball. So now that Matt Ryan is in place, the Colts are going to be able to go after these second tier or these free agents in the second tier, in the second wave of free agency, and they still have, after this restructure, I'm assuming they're still going to have one of the highest cap numbers in the league. So you could see a guy like maybe Marquez Valdez-Scantling, T.Y. Hilton still out there, Julio Jones, kind of getting ahead of myself, but it's going to allow.
We'll get to the free agency ideas here in a few.
Right, it's going to allow the Colts to be able to make some moves.
I wasn't rolling my eyes at you. I'm rolling my eyes at this clown, Tyler Dietering, friend of the show, for talking about Miami already. Listen, we talk about the NFL and their free agency also later in the show. Give us a minute. You know how this goes. You've been around a while.
A lot of picks, Tyler. A lot of picks.
Strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to say I think I talked about this last week too. I think Matt Ryan is a hybrid between Phil Rivers and Carson Wentz, in that he's much closer to a Phil Rivers than he is a Carson Wentz, but he is more mobile than the statue Phillip Rivers. He does have more arm strength than Phil Rivers did, especially that last couple of years. But he's super smart, intelligent quarterback. He said in his press conference, I tried to model myself. I wanted to be Peyton Manning. You know what I mean? He didn't do that by turning into, Lamar Jackson. Mike Vick, trying to follow in those footsteps with the Falcons. Smarter guy. You talk about more of his strengths, Andrew, and I want to hear what you think his weaknesses are.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head that he is a little bit more mobile than I think people give him credit for, because I mean, in today's day and age, when you think of mobile quarterbacks, you think of like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, guys that get out and run for big yardage or scramble around. Well, the thing is, Matt Ryan can still move. He just is more of a Tom Brady mobile, where I mean, I wouldn't call Tom Brady a statue in the pocket because of how great.
Which, by
Tom
the way,
Brady
is more mobile than Peyton Manning ever was. Sorry, go on.
And I think even Peyton Manning did this to a degree too. Is you can be mobile within the pocket by just these little side steps here and there, being able to step up, that movement in the pocket. And if you go to any football practice from high school through the NFL, quarterbacks consistently drill on this thing. They're stepping over the bag, stepping over the body guys, and they're just trying to make sure that they're keeping their feet moving. They're making those subtle moves in the pocket so that way they can evade the rush. And just looking at some film from last year, Matt Ryan still does a phenomenal job at that. So you combine that with his ability to get the ball out quickly. He's probably still one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. I mean, he can throw it into a bucket from 40 to 45 yards away. Those are the things that I think you're going to see, and the offense is going to look a lot more similar to what it was in 2020 when you had Phillip Rivers. Now, I'm not saying that the deep passing game is going to completely go away, because I think Matt Ryan can still hit it over the top. I mean, Matt Ryan, even last year, I think he had the best expected completion percentage of throws over 20 yards. So the arm's still there, and he's still deadly accurate on those deep balls. But I think when I say the offense is going to look more like what it did with Phillip Rivers, is you're going to see a lot more quick passing, a lot more mesh concepts where you get the ball out to your receivers in space quickly and let them go to work. I mean, that's something that Carson Wentz just didn't do last year. He didn't make the layups. He didn't get the ball in his playmakers' hands. And that's why the Colts dropped from one of the best teams in the league in yards after catch to one of the worst teams in the league in yards after a catch from 2020 to 2021. It's because Carson, that's just as much of a quarterback stat as it is a wide receiver and a pass catcher stat. So I think we're definitely going to see that. His command at the line of scrimmage is, I think it's going to give you flashbacks of Phillip Rivers, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, because that guy's seen it all. He's incredibly bright at the line of scrimmage, will have complete command over the offense. And then I think the final strength I want to get into before we move on to like kind of your weaknesses is the leadership. You and I were talking about it before the show, and you even said this guy is the ultimate professional, and I 100% agree. From the very moment from the very first question he took, I should say, in that press conference, it feels like there's an adult in the room, and it feels like there's a guy that's been there before, a guy that knows how to be the leader of a franchise in the NFL. And then his comment about what he thinks leadership is, and saying, in my view, leadership is to serve your teammates, and not every teammate is going to be different, but you need to get to know each individual one and how they respond to various things, how you can kind of go to them about various things, and kind of learn how to lead each one of your teammates individually. And that's just that's just perfect. That's exactly what the Colts wanted. The Colts, the rumors came out that there was a leadership void in the locker room. That's not going to be present with Matt Ryan there.
Matt Ryan, 6 yards, air yards per completion. Wentz was 5.9. People forget. Stats Matt has been throwing me stats this week that just totally disprove his whole noodle arm nonsense that he threw around.
The theory that the deep ball and the deep passing game is going away this year because Matt Ryan's the quarterback, it's just simply not true. You're going to see it quite a bit.
Oh, and Phil Rivers, I mean, down the field, he wasn't great outside the numbers, but down the field is not it. It doesn't just have to be an arm strength thing. Yeah, Matt. it doesn't just have to be a straight up arm strength thing. Phil Rivers was still able to get the ball down the field to a degree because he knew when a guy was going to be open before the ball was snapped, and he timed it right. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be 70 yards down the field. You can put it 50 yards down the field as long as you know when he's going to be there and he's going to be open. Matt Ryan has that opportunity. I'm curious about your weaknesses because I've not watched film on Matt Ryan. I won't lie and say I watched a whole ton of Falcons games this year. So what did you see in Matt Ryan?
Yeah, I certainly didn't either. I had my first real Falcons action has been this week diving back into
a couple years ago when we were watching the Colts play him in Lucas Oil.
Right, exactly. Now we're going to see him quite a bit. I would say his weaknesses. I mean, again, if he obviously can't move outside the pocket.
Yeah.
If you're going to rely on him to make those kinds of plays, it's obviously not going to really be there. I would say he does tend to take some sacks. And I think that could be also a product of just the bad offensive line that's been in front of him. What concerns me a little bit is just how many times he has been hit over the last few years, but he still hasn't. He's only missed 3 games in his career. The guy's tough as nails. So you do tend to see that a lot of times there. If he is pressured right up the middle in his face, that's when he can kind of tend to get into some mistakes. But that's kind of the same thing that Matthew Stafford or even
Tom Brady, Peyton Manning,
the guys that make their hay in the pocket, that's what you're gonna that's what you're gonna see. The good thing for the Colts is the guys in the middle are Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly, and it's possibly Danny Pincher, who played well last year. So they've got a pretty stout group there. So again, I think it's going to take some time. I don't think he's going to come out week 1 firing and the Colts are going to be the best offense in the league. I think you're going to see it take some time. It's probably going to be the same thing we talked about last year with Wentz, the same thing we talked about in 2020 with Phillip Rivers. It's going to take about probably a month into the season before you start to see this offense clicking on all cylinders, because again, it's a great quarterback. It's a professional, but it's a completely new offense. So it's not like Phillip Rivers, who has been used to Frank Reich's offense. Matt Ryan is learning this for the first time. So new offense, new weapons, new team, new teammates, obviously. So it's going to take some time. But I think once they do start to click, maybe after that first month of the season, we're going to really see this offense start to hum. And I think it's going to be that 2020 to 2018 version when you have a fantastic cerebral quarterback there at the line of scrimmage who can make all the throws and is very, very accurate. You're going to see a very good version of this Colts offense.
Matt makes a good point. Matt Ryan is going to have a full off season, whereas Rivers and Wentz did not. Hopefully.
And that's a really good point. I think that's with the Colts were linked to Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield, and even though they really didn't have any interest in Baker Mayfield, one thing that was very important to the Colts is they wanted their quarterback in there for all of the offseason programs, because they made this very clear at the end of the season that they felt like not having an offseason program really hurt them and really contributed to them getting off to a slow start. And Chris Ballard said, we will have an offseason program. Guys can be here if they don't have to be here if they want, but the guys that want to win, they'll be here. And they wanted their quarterback, whoever it was going to be in the building, to be at those offseason workouts and to really dive in 100%. And Matt Ryan will do that. Absolutely.
And back on the weakness, taking more sacks, the pressure up the middle, Peyton Manning used to just hit the dirt. You know what I mean? Sometimes, and it used to drive me insane. But having the brain to know, you know what? I'll get him on the next play, or I'll get him on the next drive. How many times have we said it? The best ability is availability. And having a guy who's willing, I don't want to say willing to take sacks, but knows when it's okay to do so, I think is not a bad thing. We saw left-handed passes, shovel passes. We saw Andrew Luck refused to just take a sack as well, and that got him in trouble sometimes. Sometimes it turned into an amazing play, but more often than not, you're going, like, why is he throwing the ball on his way to the ground? Matt Ryan's not going to do any of that nonsense, so we're not going to be having those conversations. I'll say this. I was very against Phillip Rivers coming to the Colts. I sold myself on Phillip Rivers because of the offensive line. I talked myself into Phillip Rivers. I was excited about Carson Wentz and the prospect that I thought he could become. Never got like giddy about it. I am absolutely out of my mind excited for this man, Matt Ryan, to become in Indianapolis. And like you said about the press conference, the tone he set right away in that press conference showed just that he's light years ahead, maturity wise, leadership wise, and professionalism wise than Carson Wentz. And that's nothing against Wentz.
Oh, absolutely.
He's a good guy.
The theme and it kind of the tone when you look back at the two, when you go back and listen to Carson Wentz's introductory press conference, it almost just seemed like he was just happy to be out of Philadelphia. He was ready to move on. With Matt Ryan, it's more, this guy is very motivated. This guy is rejuvenated, and he's coming here. Not only does he want to win a championship, but you got to think in the back of his head, it's like, man, the Falcons gave up on me way too early. I still got it. And I want to come out here and I want to dominate and I want to go and win a Super Bowl and show the league that I still have it. And he didn't say it in that manner, but you could tell in the tone of his voice and the way he presented himself, this guy's motivated. He's not just happy to be here and happy to be away from the Falcons. He wants to do something about it. And I think that's really key.
All right, let's keep her moving here. The fit in Frank Reich's offense. I see some hybrid form and then some more fun weapons and plays between Rivers and Brissett's offenses with Frank Reich. And the biggest thing mixing in, I think, more downfield plays, more outside the number plays. Jacoby Brissett had the arm strength to throw the ball down the field, just refused to do it for whatever reason. The mesh is going to be a thing for sure. And Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor, honestly, I hope JT gets more involved out of the backfield, but Nyheim Hines is going to be back this season, all the way back this season.
The return of Nyheim Hines is probably one of the biggest things that I am excited to see in this offense. From him going from 63 catches down to 40 from 2020 to 2021, absurd. Should not have happened. And not only has it been made clear by both Frank Reich and Chris Ballard this offseason that they want to get Nyheim Hines more involved. If you just look at the tape and you look at the past games, when Nyheim Hines is heavily involved in this offense, the Colts offense is more dynamic and they have more success. And that's not saying that we need to take things away from Jonathan Taylor, but Nyheim Hines needs to be more involved instead of trying to make plays for Desmond Patman out there. I mean, you want to have Nyheim Hines, you want to have a package, and you want to have him part of the game plan to make sure he is involved.
Yep.
Not just out of the backfield, but he can do so many things, split out wide, put in the slot. He's just that ultimate weapon. I don't even want to call him a gadget guy anymore because I think he's above that. I think he can do multiple things so well. He's just a pure weapon for this offense. And I think with having Matt Ryan in there, who loves to use his running backs as well, you're going to see Michael Pittman Jr. even ascend a little bit more as well, creating that connection with Matt Ryan. And like
crossers especially.
Right. And like Stats Matt says, Ryan has a 50+ reception back like that every year he's been in the league. If you're a fantasy football player, consider taking Nyheim Hines in the middle rounds. I think he could be a steal there. I really could.
I think part of what you talked about earlier too, about maybe expect him to be a little, like a month slower to start the season. Like Matt said, hopefully he's got a full off season. And you thought that was a good point. I think another good point was made by Matt Ryan himself during the press conference. He said, I didn't exactly go on any long runs with a single head coach. He said, I've had 3 head coaches, and he thinks 6 offensive coordinators in his time at at Atlanta, and it was like he jabbed that and then kind of smiled, like, but he was like, dude, I am not new to new offenses. This is just another day in the league, bro.
Right.
He might, but then he kind of like smirking, like, like I've had some guys around the building. And that made me laugh. I think that's what I was trying to find, actually, to start before the episode. I think that's what made me laugh so hard. I was dying down here at that part.
Well, I think what will help too is I mean, we've seen Frank Reich for 4 years now. Frank Reich isn't a guy that just stays strictly with his offense and says you better learn it and you better do it my way. Frank Reich will take that offense and mold it to his players' strengths and mold it to what Matt Ryan is good at. So you're going to have Matt Ryan's input on this offense and on what this team is going to look like this fall, and they're going to tailor it to Matt Ryan's strengths. They're going to tailor it to what Michael Pittman and Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor do best. You're really going to maybe Julio Jones. You're going to see this Colts offense morph into what Frank Reich and Matt Ryan think will be best for this team and what's going to exemplify Matt Ryan's strengths.
My favorite thing that's going on Twitter right now, and why is my mother-in-law in the chat? That's wonderful. Hello, Deborah. The rebound from the Carson Wentz trade. The way Twitter's been putting it is, and this is my favorite thing this offseason they've been doing with different players. The Colts got Matt Ryan and all the I can't even put our trade into the right words. The one that got me was the Dolphins got Tyreek Hill for Jeremy Tunsil, and that's made me laugh. How would you put it for this Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan exchange?
I think now I want to preface this by saying, I mean, it's still we're still looking at the Carson Wentz trade as a mistake. You can't look at it and say any other way than it was a failure, because you gave up a first round and a third round pick to have Carson Wentz for one season and you missed the playoffs. But I do think that Chris Ballard and the Colts did a very good job of being able to recoup as much as they could and for this trade, because number one, they gave up less for Matt Ryan than they got back in the trade for Carson Wentz from the Commanders, which is just,
we raved about it last week. We could not believe what we got for Carson Wentz. Couldn't believe it.
Right. And I think part of the reason why is because the Colts stayed patient. Chris Ballard stayed patient. Yeah. He wasn't going to panic. He knew he had some options out there, and he wasn't going to overplay his cards. And he could have possibly even learned that from last year when the Colts were basically betting and bidding against themselves in the trade for Carson Wentz. So obviously you didn't recoup all of the assets that you gave up, but to be able to recoup a better third round pick, to move up 5 spots in the second round, and then you're probably that pick next year that's a third will probably end up being a second. I would consider that a win, all things considered, since Jimmy Garoppolo still can't be traded, Baker Mayfield still can't be traded. The Colts did pretty well getting back some assets for Carson Wentz and flipping it into Matt Ryan.
Here it is. The Colts got Matt Ryan and moved up in the second and third in 2022 and a conditional third round in 2023 for Wentz and our original third rounder, and we lost a first rounder on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And honestly, I mean, you'd love to have that first round pick. Don't get me wrong, but if there was any draft to not have a first round pick, it's this one, because it's lacking elite talent. And instead, it's more of a very deep draft. You can find quality starters and quality players all throughout day 2 of the draft.
Mm-hmm. So I do believe this is Terry. Hi, Terry. Matt Ryan the best possible option at this junction? Also, are you comfortable with the receiving core, or do the Colts need to add more? I think we'll get to the receiving core here in a few minutes. But yeah, I do think Matt Ryan was not only the best option at this point in time, but an absolute surprise that he came up at all. I think we said that earlier. So
what does Chris Ballard always say? That you got to be a little bit lucky in these kind of things. And the Colts were lucky.
And we were last year.
The Colts were lucky that Matt Ryan became available and they were able to jump on it. A little luck has to be involved with these things.
We were lucky last year with Carson Wentz. Did it turn out to be a bad idea? Yes, but the ability to get him was a lucky situation. That fell into our laps as well. Grade the trade.
I'm going to give it an A. I'm not going to give it an A plus just because. I mean, it's not. I'm going to save an A plus for like a Russell Wilson or a top 5 quarterback. But as far as the trade as a whole, A, because I think Matt Ryan isn't exactly what the Colts needed, and I think for Matt Ryan, he needed the Indianapolis Colts. I wrote a piece on this last night that came out this morning. That Matt Ryan, he needed to change the scenery. He needed and deserved to be with a better team to end his career, rejuvenate him, because we've seen it with Tom Brady. We've seen it with Matthew Stafford the past 2 years. It's Matt Ryan's turn. Matt Ryan very well could capture that same success with this Colts roster. And the Colts needed a quarterback that was ready to win now, because this roster is just too good to tank. They needed a quarterback that could come in, be a great leader in the locker room, which Matt Ryan, I 100% believe, will be. Someone that can handle the offense, a very cerebral quarterback, which Matt Ryan is. It's really just a perfect match. So I'll give it an A.
I'm going to go with an A as well. So I'm not going to go deep into it. I think it's an A. So to take up my time talking about the grade, just a quick answer. Do you think now we still draft a quarterback in this year's draft? Like if we would have gotten a Marcus Mariota?
I highly doubt it this year. Okay. But I think when the Colts have their first round pick next year and a much better quarterback draft class, I wouldn't rule it out, because again, this isn't a long-term solution. And then the Colts do still need to find that long-term solution. But I think next year will present Tom
Brady's turning 45 this summer.
I mean, it could be, but I think the Colts, when you're planning ahead next year with a deep quarterback draft class and a first round pick, you can get a guy, have him sit behind Matt Ryan for a year or two and learn, which, I mean, who better to learn about the quarterback position from than Matt Ryan? And then when Matt Ryan is ready to move on, or if he starts to go off the cliff, then you have your future there in waiting.
All right. Let's talk about Colts free agency. Andrew, a little free agency update. Let's do the Colts free agency tracker first and get the shorter version out of the way. Wide receiver Zach Pascal is heading off to the Eagles to reunite with Nick Sirianni. Hey, good for Zach Pascal. Great player. I don't think he was ever. I don't think his ceiling is much higher than we've seen out of him. Good blocker. He's going to be a good addition for a unique offense over in Philadelphia, but not a huge loss, but a position we need to fill.
Yeah, and Zach Pascal was a good Colt. It's not a surprise that he went to the Eagles, because Nick Sirianni has always said that if his boys could grow up and be any football player, he'd choose Zach Pascal. So Pascal's a great blocker, a guy that will do everything, and hopefully he gets a good opportunity there in Philadelphia.
Defensive end Al-Qadim Muhammad reunites with another former coordinator of the Colts, and Matt Eberflus at the Bears.
The least surprising move of free agency, Al-Qadim Muhammad going over to the Bears with Matt Eberflus, who Matt Eberflus played over the young guys. I mean, good for Muhammad. I saw some funny tweets that the Bears traded Khalil Mack to make room so that Al-Qadim Muhammad could start. But I mean, he was a I wouldn't say a great, but he was a fine player for the Colts, and wish him well.
Safety. This one surprised us, and maybe we didn't like it much. Safety George Odom is heading to the 49ers. Maybe clearing up a little room for honey badger action.
You may be. This one hurts. I think George Odom is very underrated. He was an all-pro special teamer in 2020. Was a guy that you could rely on as a backup safety to come in and play either spot when needed. And I honestly think the Colts didn't play him enough. I would have loved to see George Odom get more chances out there, because I think he's a really good safety. So he gets a 3-year deal with the 49ers. They got a good one. I think Colts are going to miss George Odom more than they think.
I think Chris Ballard is really good at drafting George Odoms, though. Isaiah Rodgers is a young guy that developed, might turn into a starter this year. Julian Blackmon was a guy who we did not expect to become a starter so quickly, and look what happened. But I think Chris Ballard's really good at drafting guys who end up playing well on special teams. So as much as it hurts now, don't be surprised if we see a player step up into that void of a George Odom and fill in for that role, hopefully as well as he played it.
Yeah, safety is definitely thin now because, I mean, Julian Blackmon is the starter. He's coming off an Achilles injury, and there's still doubt
ACL 2 years before that.
There's still doubt that he'll be ready for the start of the season. So the Colts really, I think, need to look at safety, not only in the draft, but prepare for them to definitely look at adding a safety here in free agency as well.
All right, let's not get crazy here. But what could be in the on the books soon, I guess, for the Colts in free agency? A lot of people are talking about Julio Jones. I am one of those people. I also am realistic and know if Julio Jones is not willing to decide, I want to win a championship, I want to get paid appropriately for what I'm really worth anymore, then he's not going to be a Colt. If Julio Jones is willing to, he might end up being a Colt. I saw a tweet today that said, what if Julio Jones and Matt Ryan were reunited in Indy? I said most likely Julio would play less than 10 games. You know what I mean? That's probably the most likely thing.
The injury bug has hit him the past couple of years. And if Julio Jones would agree to come to Indy on a cheap 1-year prove it deal, I'd be all for it. Do I want to put 10 to 15 million into Julio Jones? Absolutely not. So, I mean, I've got a piece that I'm working on that should come out tomorrow about 5 free agents to add with Matt Ryan. But the Colts, now that they have their quarterback, they got to help him out. So wide receiver needs some work because still, outside of Michael Pittman, you don't have a reliable receiver. T.Y. Hilton's still out there. We'll see. We'll see if he re-signs with the Colts now that Matt Ryan is in Indy and now that Reggie Wayne is the wide receiver coach. We'll see if he gets on a cheaper deal. Colts still need help at tight end. I mean, they re-signed Mo Alley Cox, but there hasn't been much movement there. And the tight end group in free agency has run kind of dry. So maybe that's an area that they go towards the draft with. But now that you have
another trade.
Or another trade, we'll have to see. But you got it now that you got the quarterback. You've got to surround him with weapons. I know the Colts want their young wide receivers to take that next step, but you can't solely rely on that because I think if you put all those eggs in that basket, you're going to be disappointed. You need to get some proven talent. Yep. I fully now expect the Colts at number 42, their first pick in the draft. Fully expect them to go wide receiver now and really try to get a weapon there. But it's time. You got to get weapons for Matt Ryan. There's still some question marks in the secondary because I think you're fine if you have Brandon Faison as your other starter opposite of Isaiah Rodgers. Mm-hmm. But you need to look a little bit more there. And like I just mentioned about safety, your safety group is very thin. There needs to be pieces there. I heard the Colts and Tyrann Mathieu have mutual interest. He obviously has other suitors, but the Honey Badger on a defense with Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner, Yannick Ngakoue, Kwity Paye, Kenny Moore, that's a defense who already loves and is very good at turning the ball over, just got even better at turning the ball over if Tyrann Mathieu came on as that third safety with Julian Blackmon and Khari Willis.
I hear he's got a bit of an attitude problem, but one moment. Wasn't Julio on the decline, asks Boris. Sure.
I think when he was healthy,
decline is the right word. I think Julio Jones was on a team with a quarterback he's never played with, in a different offense, with another number one wide receiver on the team. So I think his numbers might have been in decline. I don't know that his play was in decline. And I think when you throw him right back in with a Matt Ryan and he doesn't have to be who he was before, who knows?
I don't think he's the same receiver as before, but I think he can be effective when healthy. I mean, when healthy, he still was a guy that moved the change. He's still a guy that can be relied upon, a big red zone threat, someone that Matt Ryan has chemistry with. So again, do you pay him wide receiver one money? No, absolutely not. I think if you can get him on a 1-year $6 to $7 million deal. You go for it.
I think he works out better. I think he works out better than an Andre Johnson did.
Yes, because I think, and we kind of talked about this on Monday night with the Horseshoe Huddle guys. Andre Johnson came in here and was expected to be a top wide receiver. Julio Jones won't be expected to be a top wide receiver in the Colts offense this year.
Anybody else floating around out there that suits your fancy? Like I said, I talked to a Chiefs fan, my boss, and he said that apparently Tyrone was getting into it with fans in Instagram comments and stuff last year before their last playoff game or something like that. You know, not really character-wise stuff that matches up with the Colts. Have you heard anything about that?
I really haven't. And the thing is, I mean, Darius Leonard does that too. So
that could be a sour, Chiefs fan that lost a great safety too.
Right. It very well could be. So I haven't. I mean, there were some issues with Tyrann Mathieu, I think, coming out, but ever since he's been in the league, I don't think there's been any issues on Tyrann Mathieu. Granted, I haven't really looked too deep into his past yet, just because he isn't on the Colts quite yet. Yeah. But I think if the Colts have some mutual interest there, with Tyrann Mathieu, they've definitely vetted him and believe that he can be a part of their team and a part of that winning, that close locker room culture.
Give me one more name people should be looking at as a potential future Colt that you think might actually happen potentially. I haven't heard any more rumblings beyond Tyrann Mathieu.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Keep an eye on that name. The Colts had interest in him at the start of free agency before Matt Ryan was in place. Now that Matt Ryan is in place, they're definitely still interested.
Aaron, we give you what you want finally, and this is what happens. Devontae Adams is gone. Marquez Valdez-Scantling's gone. Sorry.
He's also has interest from the Chiefs, and I've heard he also still has interest from the Packers. So the Colts aren't the only team, but he's a name that I know the Colts are interested in.
So what's up with the quite yet? You said he's not on the team quite yet. You said Kyle Stewart thinks he knows something about Tyrann Mathieu.
I mean, if I just know that there's mutual interest and the Colts are one of the top teams on Matthew's list. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. All right. We as much, I'm not in a rush today. Like, I don't have anything going on, but we're 12 minutes from 9 and we haven't even gotten into the NFL free agency yet. So I'm not surprised. We always and we've had a couple of them now. These Colts new quarterback for the Colts episodes typically do.
They dominate. They dominate the discussion, but that's fine.
They do.
That's
fine. All right. NFL free agency.
Let's go.
Okay. Sorry, Matt. I know you had some questions. Yada yada. Let's move it along now. Trades. I think everybody knows about this. The Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson waives his no trade clause to join the Cleveland Browns. Unfortunate for us that he's not leaving the AFC. Fortunate for us that he's not any longer in the AFC South. He got a 5-year, $230 million contract that is fully guaranteed. The Browns trade 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 fourth-round picks for Watson and a 6th-round pick. They've got to go back getting some of these picks back because the Browns have drafted well the last few years. So that's quite the haul.
That's in Herschel Walker territory as far as big trades and how much capital it costs to get the player. And for his representation to be able to get him a $230 million fully guaranteed contract, I think that might be the biggest storyline to come out of this as far as the acquisition itself. Is because I think that might set a precedent. I think now with these top quarterbacks, not only is it going to be big time money, you're going to start to see fully guaranteed contracts because now that Watson got this, I mean, imagine Lamar's contract is coming up. Josh Allen already signed, but Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, when these young guys that are still on the rookie deals are going to start renegotiating, I think that fully guaranteed mark is going to be used and these quarterbacks are going to want it as well. But I mean, obviously the biggest news in the NFL the past week, whether you're happy about the Deshaun Watson trade or not, it's still it's huge. It's huge, and it caused the domino effect for the Colts to get Matt Ryan. There's no question about that.
Hey, he's been prosecuted for nothing yet.
Oh yeah, I know.
I wouldn't be shocked if the Browns still have Baker Mayfield on the roster to play during the suspension of Deshaun Watson if he will.
We'll get to that because they signed another quarterback to be his backup.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I totally forgot about
a guy we're familiar with.
Never mind. And you know what? It just shows once again the NFL doesn't give a damn. If you can play football, they want you to play football because that's going to make them money, and it's a business at the end of the day.
And I didn't put this in the notes, but since you mentioned it, I guess we can talk about it real quick. Baker Mayfield requested a trade officially, and there's not really many teams looking to get a quarterback now that will trade for Baker Mayfield.
Seahawks are the only one I can think of at this
Seahawks, point. And I don't even know how much the Seahawks are really interested in Baker Mayfield. We'll have to see.
Well said, Boris. All right, let's move it along. Chiefs trade. We talked about Deshaun Watson a lot last week. We're good. Now this one, today, the big news. Chiefs trade wide receiver Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins for a 2022 first-round pick, 2022 second-round pick, a 2022 fourth-round pick, as well as a fourth and a sixth-round pick in the 2023 draft. Hill receives a new 4-year, $120 million extension with $72.2 million guaranteed. Let me run this back up to Mr. Tyler Diedering. Oh, dang. I meant to talk about that question earlier. Never mind. I guess I missed. It's a good week for Miami, Tyler says. There we go.
feels like this trade came out of nowhere. And it was because Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs were renegotiating his contract on an extension, and Tyreek Hill wanted more money than Devontae Adams got. He wanted to be the highest paid receiver in NFL history. The Chiefs weren't willing to do that, and when they weren't willing to do that, Hill requested a trade, said you're either going to pay me or I'm not going to play here. And I mean, good for the Chiefs, because honestly, I don't know about paying a wide receiver $30 million a year. That's just absurd to me. Especially when there's so many other good wide receivers out there. You still have Patrick Mahomes, and you have an incoming wide receiver class that's phenomenal. So, I mean, sure, good for the Dolphins, because that offense with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill is the fastest duo in the NFL, bar none. And there's no hiding for Tua Tagovailoa anymore. He's by the end of the season, you're going to know whether Tua's got it or he doesn't. There's no excuses anymore.
I love that. There's no more hiding for Tua. That was a great line, Andrew. Somebody put that on a billboard. So Darius Butler tweets about this, says the Chiefs should have paid Hill before Adams got his new deal. Tyreek Hill is the Steph Curry of the NFL. You don't let a guy like that walk out of your building. That Kansas City offense won't put fear in anyone's heart without the cheetah. I respectfully disagree with Darius Butler. Much smarter man in regards to football than me, but Patrick Mahomes puts the fear of God into people, along with Travis Kelce and whoever else they put out there. And I said this in a tweet, and I said, I know how much, and I just said, I don't think hauling, sending out as much as they did for and my mistake, I called him a 30-year-old wide receiver who's, and this is a fact, greatest strength is his speed. I don't think that's a bad deal. I don't think if you get that much for a guy who is this close to slipping, history shows, okay, I don't think that's a bad deal. And some fanboy from England apparently says he's 28, who is as fast as any wide receiver's ever been. Blah, blah, blah. That was a disgraceful football take. All right, pal. Fanboy, I'm not wrong. I'm just stating a fact. It's his greatest attributes is speed. He's a very, very good wide receiver. I didn't in that sentence belittle his ability to run great routes or read defenses. I said his best strength is his speed, and it's true. And that's going to start to slip.
I mean, there's a reason that Demarcus Robinson and Mecole Hardman are also weapons in that Chiefs offense. It's because of Andy Reid and him scheming those players open, and Patrick Mahomes. Now, I'm not going to discredit Tyreek Hill from being a great wide receiver. He's an all-pro. I would consider him one of the top 5 to top 8 wide receivers in the entire NFL. But again, you got to have the quarterback as well. I don't
Did you say receivers or did you say players?
Receivers.
Oh, because according to Jordan McGeever, he's not a fanboy, and Tyreek Hill is a top 10 player in the league that has changed the league. And this Dolphins fan apparently gets 2 of their prime of his prime years. So apparently he is going to die at 30. And he single-handedly changes the franchise. He's one of one. Buddy, Jerry Rice was one of one. Okay.
Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison, Larry Fitzgerald. He's not in those guys' stratosphere.
Not even close. All right, we can stop talking about Tyreek Hill. The Rams trade Robert Woods to the Titans for a 2023 sixth round pick. I did see some people kind of harping on Chris Ballard for this one. I don't know if I can blame him too much for, hey, how did we not make this phone call?
I think the reason for that is because
injury.
Number one, he's over 30. He's a wide receiver over 30 coming off an ACL injury, and he's also getting paid $15 million a year. Again, it's only a 6th round pick, but when a loaded wide receiver class, when you can get a young guy on a rookie contract and put that money elsewhere, I just don't see paying wide receivers, especially older wide receivers, that amount of money. I just can't see it.
Yeah. Okay, you know what? I just sent it in the chat, but I'll say it. Matt says, I know this is a Colts podcast, one of many, but the only one called that. But do you find it odd that Kansas City takes on so many reclamation projects? Josh Gordon, now Corey Coleman. I think the Seahawks kind of are a team that has been willing to do that in the past as well. You've seen other coaches and organizations willing to do it throughout the years. Where did Mike Vick go after the
Eagles
came back? The Eagles, you know what I mean? It happens. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm not shocked that the Kansas City does it, just because Kansas City is in the position that they are, and because they have Andy Reid there. I think they feel like they can take those risks,
and they're constantly ready to win right now. They could win,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right, and they have enough. They have enough weapons there that if it doesn't work out, they can easily get rid of them. They're not relying on them. So a team like that it doesn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if the Rams do something like that. Like you already talked about, the Seahawks have done that stuff in the past as well.
All right, let's go through the signings. Stop me if you hear one that's got your attention big time, Andrew, or if you want to say a half a sentence after each one, go for it. Bengals get offensive tackle Lael Collins, formerly from the Cowboys.
Pretty much reworked their entire offensive line, did exactly what they needed to do. Bengals have killed it the offseason already.
Bills acquire wide receiver Jamison Crowder from the Jets. Dolphins quarterback Jacoby Brissett from the Dolphins.
There we go. There's the backup to Deshaun Watson.
And where Baker lands, we'll never know. Chargers get tight end Gerald Everett. He gets to drive down the West Coast from Seattle. Chiefs get wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster from the Steelers. That happened right under my nose. I did not know that happened until.
I thought Juju would fit better as the number 2 wide receiver in Kansas City, but as of right now, he moves up to the number 1. So again, you lose Tyreek Hill, but Juju is still there, and I would assume that the Chiefs are going to look to add in the draft at wide receiver as well.
Chiefs also hosted MVS today, so that could be an interesting duo if that's where he ends up. Dolphins do land the big offensive tackle name in the free agency. Offensive tackle Terron Armstead from the Saints. Some people called him the best free agent in the NFL.
Terron Armstead was he was, a lot of people thought, the best free agent out there. A big left tackle that he's great, but he's often injured. And that's why I really wasn't going for the Colts to really go all out and sign him. I'm a big Matt Pryor fan, and Chris Ballard kind of reiterated it yesterday that Matt Pryor is going to get the first shot at left tackle, which I'm all for it. I love that idea, and I think Matt Pryor is going to do a great job there at left tackle. But
and I saw somebody mention, like, we can't have $110 million offensive line.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's not sustainable.
Yeah,
you can't have over 25 or close to 50% of the cap in guys that don't even touch the ball. So again, the Dolphins trying to make moves and really trying to get better.
Sorry. Giants. Oh, Falcons signed quarterback Marcus Mariota. Raiders. He's going to be the starter?
He will be the starter. He'll be the replacement for Matt Ryan.
All right. It's funny how the carousel goes around. Giants signed running back Matt Breida from the Bills. Panthers get puncher Johnny Hecker from the Rams.
Love Johnny Hecker. Good punter.
Raiders sign wide receiver DeMarcus Robinson from the Chiefs. Seahawks get defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson from the Raiders.
I thought Quentin Jefferson, a guy that has been in Gus Bradley's defense, thought he would have been a good depth piece along the middle of the line for the Colts.
As Matt mentioned earlier, something about depth in the defensive tackle position. We'll see. Titans get tight end Austin Hooper. Man,
that would have been a good one. That really would have been a good one. He signed on Friday with the Titans, so it was before the Colts had Matt Ryan. But Austin Hooper would have been a really good fit in Indianapolis back with his old quarterback.
Vikings. This one hurt some Packers fans that I follow on Twitter. This one hurt him. Linebacker Zadarius Smith goes to the Vikings from the Packers.
So Zadarius Smith originally was going to commit to the Ravens and go back there. I'm pretty sure, and then he spurned them, and now he's going up north from Green Bay up to Minnesota.
And the re-signings, and I know these first two did explore the open market a bit. Buccaneers running back Leonard Fournette back to the Bucs, 3-year deal, I believe, right?
Correct.
And the Cowboys, I didn't know about this one. I did see his name floating around with some other teams. Linebacker Leighton Vander Esch, the second best linebacker of his draft.
At least the second best. I don't even know if he's that.
Minimum,
you get it.
Maximum, you all get it. Well, you get it, okay? Falcons, running back / wide receiver, Andrew has in here even. Cordero Patterson re-signs with the Falcons. Jaguars re-sign wide receiver Laquan Treadwell. Packers tight end Bob Tunyon, big Bob Tunyon.
Thought he would have been a nice fit with the Colts.
Hey, Jeff Michael. 1, thanks for joining us. 2, go back and listen to this segment where we talk about this. 3, yes, there are rumors. Packers also re-signed cornerback Rasul Douglas. Saints re-signed quarterback Jameis Winston.
Oh, funny story about this. The Colts actually had a jet getting ready to fly to New Orleans to pick up Jameis Winston for an official visit Monday morning before they completed the deal with Matt Ryan. So if Matt Ryan wasn't coming through, Jameis Winston might be the Colts quarterback right now.
You know what I haven't seen yet is that the Colts are racist and only sign white quarterbacks. So that's good. It's good. We were going to fly him in and visit him. That's good to hear. Titans re-signed kicker Randy Bullock. Good for him. Do we still have 2 kickers?
I think Chase. I'm not sure if Chase or not Chase.
Chase Elliott. This is what you're trying to say. That's what you're trying to say. Hey, bring him in and kick. He's a little guy.
Chase Elliott going to a road course this weekend. Bet the house on Chase Elliott to win. But no, Money Badger. Why can't Michael Badgley? There it is. I couldn't
Money
think
Badger.
Of his name. His nickname is the Money Badger.
That's a terrible nickname.
So Michael Badgley. I'm not sure if he's a free agent or not. I thought he was, or he was a restricted free agent. But if not, the Colts still have 2 kickers. It's going to be a kicking competition.
Extensions. Panthers extend wide receiver DJ Moore, the Patriots. Extend offensive tackle Trent Brown, and the Rams extend Matty Stafford, brother.
Matthew Stafford with a massive contract extension that will allow him to end his career in LA, and it's obviously well deserved. The guy just went there, won him a Super Bowl. Congrats to Matty Stafford.
I just want to say that I'm a little disappointed in the Colts media today for the press conference with Matty Ice. They just kept mentioning Tom Brady and Peyton Manning leaving their team, a veteran quarterback leaving the team and going to win a Super Bowl. Literally Not one single reporter added Matthew Stafford this year with the Rams. It was unbelievable. The disrespect.
I feel like yesterday when I was watching it, someone did mention Matthew Stafford, but I forget who
it was. Matt Ryan. No, somebody asked specifically a question about Matt Stafford, but like Chap, like he was like multiple people were like they only kept throwing out Brady, and I think Matthew Stafford's a much more fair comparison than throwing Tom Brady and Peyton Manning's name around in Matthew Ryan's face. What do I know?
I mean, I think maybe. I mean, obviously, you're going to mention Peyton because it's with the Colts, and Matt Ryan said that his idol was Peyton Manning. So
correct.
But yeah, I think this compares more similar to what Matthew Stafford did last year rather than what Tom Brady did a couple years ago.
I agree. That's what I think. That's it. News around the league. Al Michaels agrees to be the play-by-play announcer for Thursday Night Football on Amazon, joining Kirk Herbstreit. That is going to be one hell of a broadcast.
I love both those guys as commentators. So that's Amazon got a good group, and then with Al Michaels moving on to Amazon, I think he's still going to call a couple games for NBC, is what I saw. But mostly Mike Tirico will be taking over the lead play-by-play for Sunday Night Football next to our pal Chris Collinsworth. All
right, that's the passing of a torch, huh?
I love Mike Tirico though.
I like Mike Tirico too, but he's not Al Michaels.
Nobody's Al Michaels. Al Michaels, like Tyreek Hill, according to that fanboy. One of one.
I wonder if that fanboy's watching our show right now.
Doubt it.
It's probably 3 a.m. there. Amazon and ESPN got much better. What happens to Fox? Ooh, a little broadcast talk. I love it.
What happens to Fox?
They call Pat McAfee.
I don't think that'll happen. They should.
That's who he's done work with before. He's done ESPN and Fox.
This would be my dream. Gus Johnson and Pat McAfee calling the main Fox games. Because I'm a huge Gus Johnson fan. The guy is just electric on a mic. Constantly gets you fired up because he's screaming about every big play. And then you got Pat in there too. That'd be my dream combo for Fox.
Maybe Fox sells Spider-Man to make up the lack of income they're going to have for, the Iceman needs his goose. All right, I thank you, Jeff. Back to the Julio Jones thing. I appreciate you, pal. Thank you for being here. You're cracking me up, pal. Anywho, go follow us. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your grandpa, tell your mistress to go follow a Colts podcast at a Colts podcast. I talked to a guy at a local brewery here the other day, Andrew, and he said he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a big Colts fan, blah blah blah. I like my Colts sweatshirt." I was like, "Thanks, man." I was like, "You're a Colts fan, huh?" He goes, "Yeah, man." Blah blah blah. We start talking. I was like, "Hey, man, if you like podcasts, you like the Colts, go check out a Colts podcast." He's like, "I'm not really into podcasts." I'm like, "That's okay. Ours isn't very good anyway." So I appreciate you being honest with me.
Look at Boris taking one for the team. He says, "I'm going to find a mistress."
Who's this guy? Boris, I like you, pal. Thanks for hanging around. Andrew, you got anything else for the many fans of a Colts podcast?
Thanks for all following us because thanks to Stats Matt for sending that shout out.
Yeah,
because
no shit. By the way, shout out Stats Matt.
We've been getting blown up with follows, not only on our personal accounts, but on the podcast account. We're now over 600 followers. Let's keep it climbing. Hey, if we get to 1,000 followers before the start of the season, we'll do a giveaway. We'll do it live. Do it live.
Do it live.
But we'll do it.
And I'll say it then.
Keep telling everybody to subscribe to the YouTube. We really appreciate you guys. And
tell your children this week the episode's non-explicit. So they can listen to.
It's gonna be a wild 2021, and draft's right around the corner. Draft's gonna be fun for us as well. You previewing it?
Anybody like it? You see what's going on? No, I didn't mean to click as early as I did, so then I made it look like a thing. All right. Appreciate you guys. Shout out Matt for giving me personally more followers than I really want. So thanks for that. And until next time, everybody, big, fat, go Colts.
Shout out Jeff. Shout out Matt. Shout out Boris. Go Colts.
Let this moment become a cherished memory. And then remember, a legacy is only worthwhile when there is a future to fuel. God bless you, and God bless football.